Dr. Mark Roseman is the founder and CEO of the Toby Center for Family Transitions, one of the largest providers of supervised visitation in Florida. He brings more than 20 years in child access and visitation program management and is the international speaker on this subject. I welcome Dr. Mark Roseman.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, everybody. I'm glad I got my buckle at work. I was in the men's room. I thought I was going to have a real big problem. It's the first time I've worn it. Let's see. This is a very special time, and I want to thank you all for being here and certainly at this conference and bringing such important messages. I've been in the field for a long time, as many of you have, and so I came to Florida some years ago to look at how I can help reunify children by using a service that I had a lot of experience with in Washington with the Children's Rights Council. Let me get into this. I have time, right? Okay. Presentation goals. What is supervised visitation? Why is it an important option for those in high conflict divorce? And Judge Marcus, who is here, has corrected me numerous times because he feels that high conflict divorce is such a bad expression. It's high conflict personalities that contributes to the issues of divorce. I worked in D.C. where we managed the largest network of supervised visitation locations. But let me interrupt myself because I often do that. Into the mic. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Let me ask you this. How many people know what supervised visitation is? Great. Have you had any personal experience with it? Any professional experience with it? So we're all experienced. Wonderful. And I'm sure that our experiences are quite unique for each of us. Oh. Testing.
Give it a second.
Testing. Oh, wonderful. Thank you. So and I'm really excited to be here. I quite honestly am. But I wouldn't be here without this gentleman, David Levy. Anybody hear of his name, David Levy? Has anyone heard of the term joint custody? David Levy's name is equated with joint custody. He brought joint custody to 32 states in this country. He also helped bring the concept internationally through the Children's Rights Council. I was with him for many years, although I wasn't responsible for the initiation of this mission, which he started in 1985. But I worked with him in D.C., and in addition to the advocacy work that we did, we also had the largest network of supervised visitation locations in the country. We had nearly 40. And I was the assistant director for that program. I've been an advocate since I was in college, fighting against the war in Vietnam and ending with my appeal as we currently are today, together fighting against the scourge of parental alienation and the impact it has on children and parents. About 20 years ago, 2006, I was a writer for Huffington Post, and my articles were picked up between 200 and 400 newspapers. One was the Stars and Stripes. Anyone know what that is? Stars and Stripes is a U.S. military newspaper. I was picked up there because I received a letter from a serviceman in Iraq. I just had the envelope that I saw on my computer. I said, oh, let me show that. I saw it this morning. And he suffered the loss of his children through ex parte decisions while he was serving in Iraq. Iraq was not a pleasure. I'm going to see if this works. I don't know how to make the link work, so I'm so sorry. Does anyone know how to do that? Play? Oh, I don't know.
Today is the 14th annual Parental Alienation Awareness Day. Ralliers at the state capitol said they want family judges to automatically give separated parents equal time with their children unless one parent is deemed unfit. Experts spoke about the need for both parents to be with their kids. They say in 30% of custody cases, one parent does not comply with court orders or tries to cut the other parent out of their lives.
when we're in court and we're under a magnifying glass, then everything becomes suspect. It should not be. This couple decided to split, but it should not negate the rights for them to have access to their children equally.
There is a bill in the State House right now that from their children.
How do I get back to the, I'm so sorry, Mr. Techie, not. Thank you, thank you. So, I'm used to pressing the down button, and the side button is not working either. I wouldn't know how to do that. I'm so sorry. I'm old enough not to know. Should that work now, I think? Oh, good. There we go. So this is the cover of my book, but I thought it was an interesting graphic because it shows a couple together, loving, and we are when we come together. But as we get to know each other and learn about each other, that loving is influenced by new knowledge. And that new knowledge can be corrupting and could be quite compelling and divisive. So what do we know? What does social science tell us? Well, when values, needs, and wants are no longer shared, we have conflict, right? And what is high conflict? High conflict occurs when there's outright rejection, resentment, and irresolute thinking and behavior that contradicts current thinking, social norms, or impugns, punishes what had formerly been shared values, beliefs, and needs, or expectations. And I wrote that this morning. I thought that was pretty cool. But we have to understand what is conflict, right? And what do we know about families today? And then we're going to get into supervised visitation and the results, okay? What do we know about families today? Well, we know about 40% of kids are in public school live in single-parent households. That's a fact. 87% of single-parent households are mothers. And 40% of kids are prescribed behavior modification prescriptions. And you talk to any guidance counselor, and they'll say, yeah. Talk to any teacher, they'll say, yeah. So, these kids are also prone to bullying, suicide, alcohol and drug abuse, pregnancy, and suicide. And I'm giving you reasons why we need to interfere, why the courts need to interfere when there is conflict, and when parents who decide to come apart, which is okay, but when they decide to withhold their child from the other parent, that's not okay. And realize this, that 85%, and I don't remember the source, I don't think I made it up, I would have used a little higher number, but 85% of child and family court decisions will impact the family up to how many years is 6 generations? 150 years, ladies and gentlemen. Judges, you have a responsibility, and that's to not only find the facts, but find out the reasons why. Ask, why do these things occur? Why is this occurring? And how can we help those who are obstinate? Litigation is the source of PTSD. How do we know this? Well, if you've been there, done that. So, what else does science tell us? Social science. Sanford Braver. Anyone know Sanford Braver? Arizona State? Shattering the Myth was one of the pivotal books that gave the social science research so compelling information to dispute the fact that mothers only, women only, are victims of abuse. Where's Ed Bartlett? Ed Bartlett has an organization to say, hey, you know what? Here are the facts about men's abuse, including dads. Well, the ability to nurture children is as strong for moms and dads, found Braver at Arizona State. He also found that the incidents of abuse are highest 6 months before and 6 months after litigation, ladies and gentlemen. So don't you think the court should ask why? How many agree? Yes. So, what do we know about supervised visitation and court orders for it? What can that do? And my argument is, and to demonstrate to you, that supervised visitation It may not be a panacea for everybody, but boy, oh boy, does it help. And I'll show you the stats. Parents needing supervised visitation are both moms and dads. You know, a mom is a non-custodial parent. She has to have visitation in order to see the children. The court needs to order it. Same thing for the dad. Okay. The rate of domestic violence I've already explained. Our work in Florida deals with the issues of biological parents, as well as with those kids in temporary foster care seeking reunification, because agencies want to unload these kids that, in fact, should be loaded back to family members. So with respect to custody considerations, we need to understand that visitation and talking with each other, you'll find out that orders are different one to the other. Judges change, and so do rulings. And the perception that we have as parents also, in fact, as family attorneys, I'm sure, that there's no compassion in the courtroom. It's for law, not for compassion. Well, that doesn't make the name family court rather innocuous and worse. Case overload, that impedes the court, and infrequent child access is addressed with cookie cutter arrangements, and we know that that's BS, don't we? Yes, we do. Visitation orders normally exclude extended family. We know that to be true, don't we? Yes. So, I'm going to skip for the sake of time, but I founded the agency, Toby Center, in 2010, and we found that parental alienation exists, some degree of alienation. If you know the 5 factors, if you look at the spectrum of alienation from a mild, moderate, and severe, it's all alienation, alienating behaviors, okay? And that's what we should look at. We shouldn't argue parental alienation. What we should argue is what's happening to the child, what's the child experiencing? Well, it's found in our cases that exists in at least 50% of our cases, that a third of the alienators do succeed in minimizing, restricting, and forever blocking child access. And most therapists do not know how to diagnose. They don't know how to ask appropriate questions and forensic evaluations. And you come see me later, and I will give you what Babe Varenkin had suggested, which is phenomenal. So what do? Well, we provide multiple services for parents going through separation, divorce, and child custody. That includes supervised visitation, therapeutic visitation, family therapy, mediation, and other therapeutic interventions. We throughout Florida now for 13 years. I have a lot of experience with the evolution of the Toby Center. I founded it. It's named for my mother, Toby. And quite honestly, the agency has a lot of experience with working with families. These are photos from our location in Delray. That's our national office. It's the only office that we lease. We have partnered with a faith-based community. We partner with nonprofit agencies throughout Florida to use locations. But most of our work, most of our visitations, ladies and gentlemen, are off-site. Why? Because we want to normalize the relationship between parents and children. You can't do that inside 4 walls. Everyone's going to bottle up. They're going to be tense. And that's not normal. Parents don't do that with their kids unless they're going to punish them, right? This is our structure. I founded the agency, and we have an accountant. We have a new client coordinator. We also have a business coordinator. Leslie, would you stand up for a minute? Leslie has helped us raise more than $150,000 since the pandemic. She also has been writing herd on me for changes in policies that we should enact or change. But we are quite structured. We have someone in charge of our agency relations. We have someone in charge of our hiring and our recruiting and training. I designed all of our training. And we have regional coordinators throughout the state. And we also, I don't know if Joni Cloth is here. Joni Cloth, who you may know, Shoni is our regional coordinator in Connecticut. We have a lot of work to do in Connecticut. But what do we know about visitation stats? 30% of visitation orders are for parents with domestic abuse, alcohol and drug abuse. Not everybody, as you know, using visitation is because they're abusive, because they're a threat, because they're going to abduct their children. But 30% are. 30% are subject to to their own sad but self-medication and and problems associated with that. 30% of parents calling for our services don't have enough money for visitation. This is not covered by insurance. So we introduced a sliding scale program for all of our programs, therapeutic, non-therapeutic. And parents tell us, 10% at least, tell us about infrequent access to their children, and limited usually to a cookie cutter arrangement. And if you don't know of Yuri Bronfenbrenner, I'd love to lecture on his model of ecological theory. But look, we're all influenced by what happens at home, what happens outside the house, what happens in media. All those messages really are problematic. So what do we know fundamentally, internationally? Children face the dilemma of need for parent access and emotional and physical safety. No matter what a kid says in a forensic, no matter what a kid may tell you offhandedly in a visitation. And 1 of 4 people have experienced trauma in their lives beginning when they were an infant. And many different types of trauma. I'm not going to go into an ACEs program right now, although I can lecture about it. So, what's our philosophy? Well, our philosophy is to try to help everybody who has need by offering sliding scale, and with Leslie's help, we've been able to help other families who don't have the money to pay for these services. Now, when people come to the Toby Center, we have to do intakes. And anybody in any profession, all the therapists that are here, any physicians, any attorneys, you want to get background. You need to know. You need to know, are there existing orders for criminal activity or criminal allegations? Are there drug abuse? Is there any civil court matters? What the hell is going on in that family? But that doesn't tell you why. And if we don't understand why, if we don't get to the why, we ain't going to help nobody. And that's proper English about 400 years ago. So, I just want to go over, do I have 10 minutes? Well, that's more than I need. I'll take 9.5. So, but thank you. Let me tell you how we function. And I'm hyper because I'm committed to this field. I'm excited. I love speaking. I love entertaining. To help me cope with my divorce, I did stand-up comedy one night, lasted 3 years. It should have lasted 2. But I needed the tomatoes. Okay. So, how frequently now I asked our providers, we've got over 20 staff members throughout the state. And I got 10 responses in the last 2 weeks prior to the conference. So this is what I got from my IT guy 2 days ago. How frequently, this is 5 questions, how frequently does your average client family have visitation? In other words, if you look at a court order, for how long does that order state you need to have it? Most orders don't tell you squat. They just tell you you need supervised visitation. So judges are lacking in specificity. So what do we find, though? 60% meet weekly, and 10%, you can see 10% for, once a week, maybe depends on their finances. Some as they can afford it. And they borrow. We get payments from family, and we get payments from employers. We get payments from others for the parent needing the visitation. Second question. On average, over how many months do sessions last before they are terminated by court order, if the court order has an ending, and frankly, they do not. The client has to go back to court. I can't tell you how many times we're asked to provide the records so that the attorneys on both sides can take a look at what's the trend, how are the visitations going, whatever that means, right? But over how many months the sessions last before they are terminated? Well, the majority is more than 12, more than a year. We have cases that are multiple years. The next highest is 4 to 6 months. Courts recognize the value of visitation, but they are so structurally lame and stupid about not including more specific details for the need for visitation and for follow-up and accountability. Okay, These are the results I want to show you. Non-custodial parents express shame and blame the court, but both blame the system. Interesting, right? And by the way, if anyone wants a copy of this, it's only $100. I mean, write to me. I'm happy to provide it. Most children found to demonstrate trust and fondness towards their visiting parent. What do we find? Most kids, more than half, 60%, not all. Because the question is, by the end of the visitation, over the course of months, how many kids are observed to show trust and fondness towards their visiting, I hate that word, parent? More than half. But 40% do not. Half of both parents show a more positive attitude toward parenting, and that's the big thing, because if we can reduce conflict, if parents can get along, remember, we have to schedule visitations. That means a provider needs to contact the custodial parent, the non-custodial parent. It's really critical that both agree to locations, to time, to scheduling. And that builds over time expectation, a new norm for them, a new relationship with each other. And guess what? 50% show a more positive attitude towards co-parenting. Intakes are critical. I mentioned that already, and I think I've got 5 minutes. Oh, good. No. Yes, I do. That'll help me. If you have questions, I'm here. Please.
Let me come to you.
Does your organization do therapeutic supervision?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes, and the supplement question is, how much of your visitation is therapeutic? And I would say 50% is therapeutic. And all on a sliding scale, by the way. We also do reunification therapy, which is a bad word in many states, but that means a much more aggressive intent to help improve the relationship between a child by having them understand what is really going on and help the parent who is oppositional to become more accepting. That the best parent, as the CRC used to say, the Children's Rights Council, the best parent is both parents.
Any other questions?
What do you do in circumstances where one of the parents is reluctant or not willing to participate?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that. In the last year, we created, with the help of a friend of mine who's a GAL, guardian ad litem, we created a case status report because after all these years, I'm tired of complaining to the attorneys and the judges who you can't get through to. You got to get through to their JA, the judicial assistant. So we created what's called what agencies want and what attorneys now appreciate is a case status report. And we let them know. And it's up to the court to enforce that. We're not enforcers. However, we are reporters, I will tell you that. Not in the sense of mandated reporters, which we are, but we report to the court. And I make sure that our staff who have problems, because I get all the problems coming up the line, I make sure that they complete a case status report. Leslie knows that. And that is really helpful. And you need to do that. Make sure that your case status is understood. And I can send you a copy of our form if you would like. I'm happy to do that.
I have time for another question or two if anybody has any.
My question is, and maybe it's more towards mental health. My question
Which is, I'm not representative of mental health, that's for sure.
okay. Well, mental health providers is, as mandatory reporters,
Yes.
have you all ever reported PA as child abuse to CPS, to Child Protective Services?
That's an excellent question. Let me answer it this way. I've trained my staff to document what they observe, not to label. Labeling gets in, as you know, trouble. And but we do report when there's repeated efforts to not comply with scheduled visitations, and if there's anything that is shared verbally, visually, with respect to obstruction. And yes, that is reported. It's reported to the court system, and it's reported to the agency management, Yes.
I don't know about other states.
Well, I'll tell you, in French, that's a shanda, if you speak French. And it's Yiddish. It means it's a disgrace. And quite honestly, we are looking to replicate our work throughout the country. So if anyone has an interest in bringing our model to their state or their country, I'm happy to discuss that. But with respect to reporting PA, you must document what you observe. You must document the obstruction that one parent might be causing and the difficulties associated with that. That they understand. And that will help you a lot.
I think that's all the time we have now.
I want to thank you all very much. Thank you for dealing with me. I've been looking forward to this for months, and I'm grateful for your time, and I wish you all much success and mazel in all that you do.